Welcome back, everybody, for the second edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Messeri, here with my partner in crime, Mike Bunt. We're going to be bringing at you some AFC East talk today, guys. I know it's fast and furious. We have some big news out of the AFC East. Got some stats to break down. We got some incredible talk on why we believe the Bills are still in great position to handle this new surge of the AFC East and what that means for the AFC in total with this growing division, which at one point prior to this offseason was one of the lesser divisions in football, was pretty much settled at the Bills. Now we got some stuff to talk about, Mike. Totally had to do some research on this. How you doing today? How you feeling? And what's going on in your world?
I'm doing great. I'm just enjoying this bombshell of an NFL offseason where it seems like you can't go more than a day or two without some amazing trade or acquisition going on. So it's been so much fun the past couple of weeks just keeping up with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'd appreciate everyone getting out there, liking the Facebook page as well. We'll bring some amazing content over there on Facebook as well as our TikTok, growing that audience too. So watch out for those quick hitters as we'll bring it to you all the time throughout the week over there on our TikTok page as well as Facebook. So, Mike, lots to talk about here early on today. And first and foremost, we have to bring up the Miami Dolphins as it pertains to the Bills and the trade for Tyreek Hill. Basically trading away their entire draft this year for the most part, as well as some later picks next year. But 5 picks in total for Tyreek Hill. It's almost like the Dolphins don't want to draft. They keep pushing these picks back and eventually turn them into Tyreek Hill. So to me, it's like, well, why not take a premier player? They have struggled at times at drafting. Let's take probably one of the best receivers in the NFL. How does that change the landscape to you in the AFC East? And that's first and foremost, probably the best player to come into the division on the offensive side.
I think the Miami Dolphins are a dangerous team offensively. Now, when I say dangerous, that's all potential. It could flame out and it could be a complete disaster. But I've been arguing with my friends that are all over the place about the Dolphins in recent weeks. In recent days, they've been saying, they don't have a quarterback. They're nothing to be afraid of. But you know what? You have a guy like Tyreek Hill and you have Jalen Waddle on the other side of the field, a tight end like Gesicki, and then those running backs that they just added in Mostert, and then you got Edmonds. There's some potential there on offense, and you don't need a tremendous quarterback to be successful with those type of weapons. I think Tua's a game manager, but being a game manager might be just good enough for them to be a playoff team this upcoming season.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. And to me, I just don't think Tua's going to have the firepower to get it done. I mean, just quite frankly, we've seen similar moves throughout different teams. Miami seems to always make splashes, not quite to the level of Tyreek Hill, but I just don't know that they're going to be able to get it done. I can't think of an example in my head that pops out that beside a real strong defense and that stupid Trent Dilfer reasoning, but I just can't get it out of my head that you just need an AFC, a top of the division, top of the league quarterback to get there. I'm struggling, Mike, to get to that point to take the Dolphins seriously. It's just the Bills are there.
I don't know if I would say top of the division. Obviously, the Bills are as talented as anybody in the NFL, so I'm not suddenly going to say I'm picking the Dolphins to win the AFC East. I'm far from that. But when you look at the wild card picture, they definitely have a chance to make the playoffs. If for no other reason, the AFC North and the AFC West are going to cannibalize each other. Those leagues, you might have great teams that end up only with 8 or 9 wins just because they're facing tremendously difficult schedules. Miami will be playing the Patriots twice. They'll be playing the Jets twice. Miami might be able to squeak out some extra wins due to who they're facing. And it comes down to this. Is Miami a great roster? No. But they got some weapons. They're known for creating turnovers, and they find ways to be competitive. This is a team that's won 19 games the last 2 years, 9-8 last year after a slow start, 10-6, just missing the playoffs 2 years before because of the Bills in that final game of the regular season. I don't think they're a team that you can just be like, oh, Tua sucks, they're going to miss the playoffs. Yeah, Tua might suck, but they still have enough weapons to be a decent squad. And I still think there's some room for improvement from Tua. He's not great. He's never going to be a top 10 quarterback, but if he can throw for 23, 24 touchdowns and get a decent running game to complement his weapons, I think they could be a competitive team. But with that said, it's going to be a battle for those final few wild card spots.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a huge battle. Like, I mean, you got to look at it. This AFC race is insane. I was enjoying not having to have a big fight in the AFC East. Look, Bean said it himself. The number one way to secure what you need to secure is win your division. We can't go in the minutia of tiebreakers. I love myself some tiebreaker scenarios. We'll talk about tiebreaker scenarios whenever we need to, but hopefully this is tiebreaker scenarios for the number one seed and not tiebreaker scenarios for the 6th seed, 7th seed. I don't want to do tiebreaker scenarios down that low. But as far as the number one seed, let's get some tiebreaker scenarios going. Hopefully you don't need those either. But look, Being said, we need to win the division and we have to focus on the division. Could we break down every AFC team? And I'm sure we will. Lots of great shows in the Cover One Network. And I'm sure a culmination of us will get to breaking down the rest of the conference. But I think you have to start and really focus on this division because it's a guaranteed playoff spot. It's a guaranteed home game and maybe beyond. So it is very important that you take care of business. And sometimes that's what you need to do. Look at the 4 seed in Cincinnati. They took care of business. The 4 seed in LA, they took care of business. That's who matched up. You don't necessarily, as much as nice as it is, especially now in the AFC as compared to the NFC, you need that 1 seed, right? But realistically, is there a huge difference between the 2 and the 4? That's what we've argued on here and everywhere else on Twitter. Like, does it really matter? Like, not overly. I mean, this specific year, it may have between the home game in Kansas City or Buffalo. But look at the next week and when Cincinnati took care of business. So it's just a matter of that was a crazy game. Some crazy situations happened in that scenario. I think the Bills did enough to win on the road. Like, there was more than enough great play in that game to really not really tell me that there's that big of a difference. And considering road teams have the same record as home teams lately, like, there's really not that huge difference, especially for a good team to go on the road and maybe with their backs up against the wall. Josh Allen seems to play mighty well in those scenarios. So, but Mike, we have to continue to talk about the Dolphins, and we've forgotten a couple of names here already. And that's Cedric Wilson from Dallas, overpaid, maybe, but he's still there, and he's still a guy that they're bringing in to potentially be their, one of their top end receivers, wide receiver 3 there with Jalen Waddle. You still have Devontae Parker there. Preston Williams is a guy that I actually kind of like a little bit behind him. And they kind of redid that left side of the offensive line with Teron Armstead, as well as Connor Williams, a guy that I thought was a super underrated guard signing. I would have loved to be on had we known the Bate scenario. Hindsight's, 2020. There's really no reason to beat down the Bate scenario there too much. Would have loved to have been in that guard situation. But there's a lot to like about that Miami Dolphins offense. And there's a lot to kind of say, well, they're still lacking at maybe the most important position. And that's the Tua/Teddy connection. I just don't know that that's going to be enough to get it done. Is it even going to be enough to get into the wild card? We'll see. I don't know that they're going to get the most out of this defense under Josh Boyer yet, and Mike McDaniel as the head coach. So I need to see exactly how that's going to play out, as they did with Brian Flores in the last couple of years. So we'll see what Raekwon Davis can bring, Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel, some of those names on their front 7, Jerome Baker that they've always had, and Emmanuel Ogbah, who they were able to renew. And always supposed to be good defensive backs play, but Josh Allen disagrees every time that he seems to play him. So that's kind of their roster. And Mike, you've heard everything. I'm going to bounce it to you guys. How much of a threat are the Dolphins? All said and done, we've kind of all talked. What's your opinion on that? What is their threat level here for the Buffalo Bills and maybe beyond?
I liked what I saw Bruce Nolan tweet the other day. He just said, with Tyreek Hill going to the Dolphins, the Bills' road to winning the division just got more difficult, but their road to a Super Bowl just got easier. And I tend to agree 100% with that. Miami will present some challenges when they go up head-to-head against the Bills. No one has the corners that can keep up with the speed of Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So that will pose threats. As Sal Capaccio said on the radio earlier this week, Miami is good enough to upset the Bills or take a game from the Bills. So it's not like you can just take them for granted and assume that you're going to just sweep them, right, like what's been the case in recent years. But are they going to win 11, 12 games? Probably not. I still think Miami is that 8 to 10 win range. So I still feel like they're not a huge threat, but they are a threat to make the postseason. Now, you mentioned some of the additions they had to their roster offensively. I like the fact that they got Teddy Bridgewater. If Tua just comes out and he stinks out the gate, you know he is not the guy, and it's time to make a switch. And Bridgewater can be a capable guy, and I actually think Bridgewater would be an upgrade for them if he ended up starting some games. Another big move, re-signing Agba. That's a good defensive end that they were able to secure and bring back to Miami. There was a lot of doubt about whether he would be back or not. So if you're just looking at the Dolphins this offseason, they've hit a home run. The big question with them is, can you win with a below average to maybe average quarterback play in the NFL? Because the rest of their roster is pretty good. They have some holes, but if you gave them a middle tier quarterback, maybe even a Baker Mayfield, you're probably saying this is a team that's making the playoffs. And I say that as someone that has laughed at Baker Mayfield the last couple of years. But if you gave them a Baker Mayfield, a Joe Burrow, any of these young QBs that have moments of flash, I think they would be a team many would pick to win a wild card position.
And one thing to kind of wrap up at least the Dolphin side of this division is the Bills' record under Josh Allen. Different coaching staff, but at the same time, some of that defense is very similar. Josh Allen's now 7-1, 2,410 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, and 4 rushing touchdowns. 247 yards a game, 53 yards per game rushing, 7-1 record. Only loss on a Charles Clay touchdown that should have happened on a drop, more or less, early on in his career. So those numbers are complete dominance. He plays really well. I think he plays well, especially in good weathered football. A lot of the times, down there, it's fairly decent weather. I do believe that there's a lot that plays into that, and that he just takes care of division games. He is just, beside the crazy win game in New England this year, he is just, and he was still really good in that game, believe it or not. He was throwing dimes that he should have never been able to throw in that wind. Besides that, he's usually very good in division games all around and getting better. So the Bills are very dominant in division games. I think Josh Allen has a lot to do with that. And the familiarity of not having great quarterbacks in the division, McDermott feasts on that. He feasts on, and I've had these statistics before, Mike. He feasts on bad quarterbacks. He should. Like you're like, Kevin, what are you talking about? Like, sure, but he should. That's not always the case. Even in the games where they dropped to Jacksonville, well, it's kind of an offensive mishap. Oh, that might have been some of the reason of the tension with Brian Daboll, if there was any, or at least some of the changes that needed to be made. Why don't you run the ball more, et cetera, whatever they may or may not have happened inside the locker room. Doesn't even matter. I don't blame, by the way, Mike, I don't blame McDermott if those conversations happen. If they're like, dude, we're the number 1 seed and you lost to the Jaguars because I didn't like your game plan, I don't blame McDermott if that happened. I don't blame Sean McDermott for saying that. Like, look, our defense literally held them to nothing. Their points were because of turnovers. Like, they absolutely destroyed them defensively. And McDermott thrives in those situations. Yes, anyone gets, and then conversely, anyone can get beat by the Patrick Mahomeses, the Tom Brady's of the world. Absolutely. It's a harder challenge, and the Bills have still shown up at times defensively in those games, not necessarily in the AFC divisional round, not the best defensive performance in any stretch of the imagination, but they did in the regular season, and they have in the past shown up in big games like that. But they do struggle sometimes against top-end quarterbacks. I'd like to see a little bit more defensive presence in those games, but that's easy for me to say. Like, that's easy for me to sit here and be like, I need 47 sacks and 7 turnovers against the top of the league. Well, yeah, of course. That's why they went out and signed Von Miller. That's why Miami countered with one of the best offensive tackle free agents in the NFL. So that's going to be an interesting battle. The Bills still bring the number 1 defense to the fold, really adding Von Miller there. Not going to really think Miami's going to be a serious threat. They've brought in primetime free agents. They've spent money on the DBs to be able to slow down the receivers of the Bills and other teams. Has worked at times, not necessarily against the Bills. The Bills get it done against the Dolphins specifically. I just don't see much there yet, especially with no future and no draft picks. They've drafted fairly poorly, in my opinion. I have their draft breakdown right here. I had on prep work before the show, and It's just not impressive for the amount of picks that they've acquired, Mike. It's just not impressive. And then to trade the rest of them essentially for Tyreek Hill, which is a cop-out to me, but you did get one of the best receivers. But now you're just like, I'm sick of taking draft picks, but it's because you suck at it. It's because you've historically sucked at it. C- rating, I have them jotted down here at. They have 7 total picks last year. 4 of them became starters, which was one of their better years ever. 2 on the practice squad, but historically from their drafts in years past, it has been pretty bad. 7 of them are already out of the league over the past 4 or 5 years. It's just not overly good. Really capped off by a really good pick of Jalen Waddle. And they got a little bit out of Liam Eichenberg. But I mean, it's just been a pretty poor go for them. Their remaining first-round pick they spent on Noah Igbenogany, a guy that they rarely play at the cornerback position. It's been a struggle for them across the board to me drafting. That's why they went out and they're like, Mike, I just want the best receiver in the league. We're going to pay him a ton of money to restrict our cap without a quarterback. Heaven forbid if they need to pay a quarterback. Hopefully not. Number 2, they don't have any draft picks. And lastly, what are they going to do in their future? Like, at the end of the day, they have a lot of money tied up to their veterans, a lot of money tied up across the board. What are they going to do when they can't fill in those contracts? The Bills can. They have all their draft picks. They didn't go with the Rams model. They still got the player the Rams used to win the Super Bowl, and then have draft picks to fill in those gaps. A lot of talk today, as we've kept on the screen here, Bean goes heavy a corner in the draft. Absolutely, in my opinion. It's not something that he generally does, but he has in the past when he needs to double down, and I think it's possible that he gets that done. 7 out of the league, complete trash. It's been a terrible time draft picks for them. Mike, that's an important note. And they just finally said, we're done with it. Like, we're out of here. Like, this is there's 7 picks out of the league since 2017. A bunch more on practice squads and 7 more on other teams. 14
You want to know another
players,
team
not on
that
the
hasn't
Dolphins.
drafted well? Another team that hasn't drafted well has been the New England Patriots in recent years under Bill Belichick. So it definitely helps the Bills' cause when their division rivals can't draft. And then you have the Jets, which are just a complete mess. I do want to say one final thought on Miami, though. And obviously,
and the 2 first round picks. Sorry, the first 2 round picks next year. That's a good point, Ron. Go ahead, Mike.
So obviously, it has been a struggle for the Dolphins to figure some things out, especially at the quarterback position. But a big question would be, there was the rumors for Deshaun Watson all offseason, all last year. What would you be more scared of? Them right now, the way they're configured after free agency and this trade for Tyreek Hill, or if they would have gone all out on Deshaun Watson? What would put more fear in Kevin Masseri?
I as a player, we're talking on the field, it's Deshaun Watson because I think he's that good. I think he's a good player. Though my counter argument is kind of what I've thought about when it comes to his new home in Cleveland is, well, he was still in Houston. The roster was fairly poor. Didn't get anything done. They won 4 games. Like, I don't know that I ever see a Josh Allen 4-game season. Could I see a 7 and 8 and 9? Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a world we live in that Josh Allen goes 8 and 9. I don't expect to ever see that, but I do think that that's hypothetically possible.
So what you have delusional fans in Miami, the ones that are delusional, they're going to say, well, you know what? Josh Allen, year 1 struggled. He didn't have anyone. Year 2, they'll say he still struggled, although us Bills fans saw a leap, even though it might not have been above average quarterback play at that point in time. And they'll point to the big leap in year 3 where he ascended to an MVP caliber player. Tua is entering that 3rd year right now. They're going to tell you these guys are going to elevate his play. And it's hard to think that he won't at least elevate to a certain decent level expectation going forward. Ceiling-wise, floor, ceiling, I'm thinking the floor is he's going to throw 20 to 23 touchdowns if he plays a full season. Ceiling, he could maybe throw up to 30 touchdowns. I'm not saying he will, but everybody keeps saying he doesn't have the arm strength to throw to guys like Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. But they don't have a head coach that really cares about going deep every play. Mike McDaniel in San Fran has always been about yards after the catch, letting his receivers, letting his running backs get in space and make plays. Tyreek Hill doesn't need to beat you 50 yards downfield. You can throw a slant and he can still run past 7 defenders and take it to the house. You have Jalen Waddle on the other side doing crossing routes. You have a tight end like Gesicki in the middle, and then you have 2 fast running backs in Edmonds and Mostert. I really think they are putting the perfect offense around Tua. I don't think he's going to be asked to be a superstar. I think what they're going to tell him is just get the ball out of your hands. And when you're quick with your passes, it doesn't matter how much of a pass rush you're going up against. You'll never get to the quarterback. So, like I said, I'm not expecting Miami to be world beaters overnight, but there is some potential for this to be a little bit more dynamic than what Bills fans say. Right now, last year they were probably mid-20s in offense. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami has a top 10 to 12 offense next year.
Fair enough, Mike. But you did bring up a point. You know who does go deep? This podcast. Anyways, shout out to Justin for winning the giveaway last week.
Yep.
Shout out. Saw it. Gave us a nice tweet. Just want to shout out to Justin. Congratulations on the Andre Reed jersey. Pretty cool. He gave us we put it up on Twitter, so take a look at that. It was a really cool giveaway that we were able to do. And more giveaways come. And we said it. We're going to bring some giveaways live on the show, live on each show. And potentially leading up to hoping to do a nice ticket giveaway later on, maybe in the draft, maybe for some draft coverage in a month. Maybe that might be a good time that we'll give away some tickets here on this show too. So appreciate everybody for tuning into that. And definitely shout out to Justin for that win, randomly selected from the contest that we did on that. So huge shout out to Justin there for participating, and everybody for following along. And we're going to do random things here on the show to do giveaways. Maybe I'll have like a horn. Like I want to do a horn, like some random, like like something that like at that, whenever that horn goes off, I'm going to pick whoever is chatting the most at that time or something. I don't know. We're going to come up with something here. We got Jessica asking, why would Miami spend so much money on a left tackle if Tua is left-handed? Fast right tackle would make more sense to me. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think to me, it's that player is one of the best tackles in the league and thus plays left tackle. So I think to me, it's a matter of let's just sign the best tackle, obviously, and not move him out of position. I don't think you would flip him to right. I don't think you would do something like that. I mean, we'll have to ask Eric if that's even possible to like the mechanics there is completely different. But it's the same kind of reasoning where the Bills having a good right tackle, hopefully in Spencer Brown. And if that, say, Spencer falls off a cliff or isn't very good this year or next year, could the Bills go out and spend a ton of money on right tackle just like they did at left? I think it's possible. Josh Allen can make a lot happen, so it's a little different. But at the same time, protecting his right side is just nowadays is almost as important because they're not pocket passers. Josh Allen's not sitting back there like a statue anymore, looking in front of him. He's moving, he's scrambling, he's shaking, he's dicing. And if he goes to his right, and there's all types of splits on how good he is to his left and to his right, you want premier protection on your right side too. And in Josh Allen's case, especially outside of the pocket. So tackle group and with a mobile quarterback like Josh is pretty important both ways. And Tua has his times where he has some mobility. But I mean, it's just an example of them going with the best left tackle in town. And it's just those best top of the end tackles don't happen to play right tackle, even though they can. So I think it's just that example. They wanted the player, he fit in, and they feel fairly confident on the right side there. So maybe that had something to do with it, with the aforementioned Liam Eichenberg. So we'll see how that all turns out for us. I do like clown horn. That's interesting. I have to think about the clown horn. I actually like that, Mike. We'll think that over. Think that through a little bit more, and we'll come at you with something.
We could always go with that buzzer that goes off every time Ohio University hits a three. I would love that to be the sound effect.
Okay. I mean, Tua has so many limitations. There's so many jokes out there. He has some definite limitations right now, guys. Like there's no doubt about it. I think we've broken, at least high level talked about those limitations, but we have to talk about the second threat and first threat last year into New England Patriots. Mike already talked about it a little bit. We got to get into New England. It is fair. They do always seem to come up with something big. Last year kind of was a shocker, man. I was not expecting them to be above the Dolphins last year. So we'll see. Mac Jones' second year. They haven't done much. Everybody's heard the clip. If you haven't heard the clip of the Patriots fan calling in to complain about Montgomery, it is totally worth it. If not, I'll play it on the show at some point. But the Montgomery clip is well worth the listen. So where the Patriots fans are like, that's all we've signed so far this offseason, Mike. So quickly over to you. Tell me the synopsis of the New England Patriots as we head into, into this season, and then maybe free agency only, but maybe got passed by the Dolphins. So tell me about what you're thinking. Are you thinking they're going to get better or regress off of that kind of miracle Mac Jones year?
I think they're going to regress. And it's funny because people entered last year thinking maybe New England is going to return to normal because they have all of their COVID guys that were out coming back. Then it started out poorly, 2-4. Mac goes on a magical run, mostly due to their run game and their defense. But of course, Mac gets anointed as the next Tom Brady by many people in the New England area. They win the Monday Night Football game against the Bills in the crazy weather, the hype, the hoopla. ESPN, the national networks, everyone was anointing them as back. There was a Boston guy that on TV who was clowning the Bills, saying, "Well, goodbye, Bills, back to irrelevancy," and they had their fun. But the truth was exposed in December and then January. New England is not back. They are a team that had a good defense and they had a good running game with a mediocre quarterback who wasn't being asked to do much. And in the National Football League, you might be able to have a successful year here or there with that combination of things going for you, but that is not a sustainable way to win football games. You look at New England versus Miami, I don't even think that's a real good competition right now. I would pick Miami most nights between the two teams just because of the skill players and weapons that the Dolphins have. I think New England is starting to descend to a team where they're a 7-8 win team, and that's just because they know how to play fundamental defense and they can run the ball good enough to keep the clock moving and keep scores low. But this is not a team that can get in a track meet, and I don't know how you can win double-digit games in the AFC going forward with the quarterback play in this conference if you don't at least have A, a good quarterback, or B, tremendous skill players to surround an average quarterback.
Yeah, and I just retweeted the Ty Montgomery clip, put it in the chat, so check it out. It's plenty good enough. Like this is hysterical. This is top notch out of New England, out of the Boston area. It's just fantastic. I'm gonna get, actually that might be my thinking about that as the giveaway horn. Just a Ty Montgomery, just like that as the giveaway horn. I don't know. We might be onto something with that one too. So we're gonna think that through a little bit more. But Mike, you hit it on the head with the competition. Like that is a complete disaster. Like, look, we saw who was on the Bills schedule. The Dolphins were why were the Dolphins winning so many games at the end of the year? They played well. I don't want to take like that much away from them. The schedule was weak.
Weak schedule, yeah.
They played the harder schedule front loaded, and the Patriots a little bit reverse where they got going like in the middle. Like they struggled in the beginning and struggled at the end. But in that middle stretch there, and then beside the one win Bills win, they really didn't do a whole lot in that stretch except beat a pretty up and down Colts team that I thought was better than they were. So there's just that kind of, they beat the Titans, didn't they, early on in the season, I believe? Was that also, did they have a Titans win in there? They think they may have beaten the Titans win. Ty Montgomery, I'm biased. I love this Ty Montgomery clip. Like, I just don't know why I like it so much. It's like he's so furious and he can't get over the fact that he's talking about Ty Montgomery and nobody, and he's asking him, like, basically the guy, the commentator there on the show was just basically like, tell me what you wanted the Patriots to do. And he just kept railing like Ty Montgomery. Like, it was fantastic. It was like, it would be like, in fairness, if all the Bills did was sign like Matt Breida, like, and we're trying to get better. We're trying to catch the Patriots and we just signed Matt Breida. You're probably going to get a call like that similarly here in Buffalo, but it's hysterical that they're melting down over there in New England. It's a complete disaster. And I just don't think they're getting it done. Like the Belichick days of having Brady being able to be economical with the compensation formula, Mike, running the system, losing free agents, but gaining third-round picks out of it. That's over. You don't have a quarterback to make up for it. Mac Jones was okay in stretches. I'll admit he played better at times than I thought he would. An absolute wreck when pressured. They were dogging us, guys, in early December. My feed was a mess from Patriots fans. Like, it was an absolute wreck. Burners galore. I had every Matt Judon season, Matt Judon sack lunch, Matt Judon, Mac Jones daddy account in my mentions for about
they were
2 weeks.
on a roll. They were playing very good football at the time. They took care, but like you said, they took care of a depleted Titans team. They took care of a depleted Browns team. They were beating up, and to be fair, they were killing the bad teams on their schedule. So it wasn't like they were just squeaking by wins against bad competition. The Patriots were playing great football. Earlier in the year, they gave Tampa Bay a game against Brady in a rainstorm. Then they win the bad weather game against the Bills. I think those performances, they nearly beat the Cowboys. All those performances added on top of each other, it gave the appearance that maybe the Patriots are back, and that is a way that they won games during the beginning of Brady's career. So I could understand the comparisons with Mac, just be a game manager, play great defense, and we're going to find our way back to winning playoff games and making a run. But it's just such a totally different game than when Tom Brady was first getting it done in the early 2000s. That might be good enough to win in the regular season, but you don't win playoff football games by having a bottom 10 quarterback in your team and no skill players. Literally, the Patriots are the team that the Bills were for 20 years, where you're hoping for a snowstorm to keep the other team from going off, because the Patriots can make a play or two to win a game, and they're not going to lose a game. That was the Patriots' motto last year. We're gonna play smash mouth football. We're gonna play great defense, and we're not going to make mistakes. And most of the time, we're going to trust that our opponents are going to make a play or two that are going to screw themselves over. Think about it. The Patriots beat Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Herbert throws an interception late in the fourth quarter. They just found ways to squeak out victories, and I just don't think they can continue doing that. And you mentioned the trolling in December. To go from 100 to 0 this quickly, and what they're experiencing this offseason with no one coming to New England while the whole rest of the AFC is just on fire. God, they're waking up to reality right now. And I know a lot of Buffalo sports media people have been tweeting about it. You don't have Tom Brady anymore. You have nothing to recruit players. Last year, you had money to throw away and get guys like Hunter Henry and go out and get Matthew Judon. That money's gone, and no one is taking a discount to go to that division to face Josh Allen and the Bills twice a year. So that's the reality, and that has to be a sour pill for most of their fan base to swallow after 20 years of dominance.
Yeah, and we saw some funny tweets in the last little bit here over Matt Judon and his recruiting ability. Like, there's been some funny tweets. We saw Sal Capaccio have some stuff going on. We saw a bunch of people get in on it, and he just cannot bring free agents to his team. Like, he's trying. He's like their highest paid player, and like, to me, like, no other thing to be said other than the only offensive player they've pretty much brought in is Ty Montgomery. I just don't think that that's enough on the offensive side of the ball to get it done against the Buffalo Bills and now potentially the Dolphins. And then the heartbreak, Mike, of the Brady rumors of potentially Miami before, whatever he says that, changed with the coaching change there. And I'm not quite sure why. Maybe he wanted to play for Flores. Not quite sure that would have mattered, but that's what Tom Brady says, that, maybe he had a good rapport with Brian Flores and that Tom Brady would have gone to Miami. Thank God. Like, I just thank God. But they just don't have enough to get it done, in my opinion, to kind of wrap them up offensively. Like, you're looking at an offense with their weapons right now of Nelson Aguilar dropping passes like Nelson Aguilar. Everyone's seen that clip. When he was dropping passes for the Eagles and didn't really do a whole lot. Kendrick Bourne turned into be a decent receiver. for the Patriots at times, kind of disappeared in moments. Jacoby Myers, a good slot receiver, gets it done. I don't know. I'm never really overly, if you see, you're not overly concerned of scheming up Jacoby Myers. Even when you have a guy like Taron Johnson and other safety play, like you're not overly concerned. A bunch of good depth players like Matt Slater or overpriced special teamer, but the Bills would, go in that guise of having good free agents behind their starters, especially at the special teams role. And then N'Keal Harry, a complete bust. Getting me into the breakdown, get his breakdown time of the Patriots. We did it with the Dolphins. We have 10 players out of the league since 2017 from their draft classes. We have, 5 players out of the league. My fault. 10 on other teams. So 15 total players not on the New England Patriots. 2 draft picks on the practice squad. And they have only developed 6 starters from their draft classes over the last 5 years. Probably their best pick, unfortunately, is Mac Jones. And then also their other high pick in Christian Barmore this year. They've struggled mightily. One of their worst picks I have jotted down here, round 2, 2018, and Duke Dawson. Injuries, never really played. Spent a 56th overall pick on him. Cornerback spot never really developed there for them. Defensive free agents for them this year. Malcolm Butler's back in the fold over there after, kind of a tumultuous change across the league. Mac Wilson, Terrence Mitchell, couple lower end free agents, and back to Ty Montgomery, Mike. So that's kind of the breakdown. What do you think about all of that? Kind of their offseason.
It's been a very mediocre offseason, to say the least. When you go into the offseason coming off an unexpected wild card berth, you're hoping that you can make those next few moves to maybe compete with the Bills. And then you see Buffalo get Von Miller. You see Miami go out and get Tyreek Hill and Armstead and Cedric Wilson. They re-sign Agba. If you're a Patriot fan right now, you're just looking at the rest of the AFC and you're like, where is our place in this conference? Where do we sit? How do we make the playoffs? And they're thinking to themselves right now, our best case scenario is maybe we squeak in to one of the final 2 wild card spots. And that's a really sad position for that team to be in, and that fan base. Obviously, we enjoy it, but for them, they're not used to this. One thing I find really interesting, and we'll show this graphic on the screen a little bit, Kevin, if you want to pull it up. DraftKings actually came out with their win probabilities and their percentages to win the division, win the conference, and win the Super Bowl. Obviously, around the Buffalo Bills have been the Super Bowl favorites, according to most Vegas places. But the Patriots and Dolphins are actually neck and neck on what's expected out of them in 2022. You can see it right there. Patriots projected for 8.7 wins. The Dolphins 8.6. Obviously, these are not exact numbers, but look at the win division, win conference, win Super Bowl. It's even. 17.1, 3.4, 1.7. That's saying the Dolphins and the Patriots are basically the same team right now. It's just that one team is going to get it done with their speed and spreading out opponents with a below average quarterback, and the other one in the Patriots is just going to hopefully get it done with their defense and have a game manager at quarterback. So if you're the Bills, you're loving this. You're a clear 3 wins ahead of anyone else in the division at this point in time, according to Vegas. And as much as people can say, oh, these are just Vegas odds, it doesn't always play out that way. Vegas is rarely wrong by 3 wins over the course of a season. This is saying you can almost bank it that the Bills are going to win the division. Obviously, most fans and experts would think that as well. But you look at those conference and Super Bowl odds for the Bills, 20% to go to the Super Bowl and 11.1% to win it all. That's best in the NFL. And eventually we'll talk about the Jets here. But yikes. Those numbers, you got to love them.
They're fun, and we have a great guest for the Jets shows that we have coming up. When the Patriots come on, we get and bring Mark Schofield, great friend of the show, great friend of WGR. I think our other shows on Cover One love Mark. He's a great interview. We like to ask him a couple of different things there. When it comes to the Jets, we're going to have on Let's Talk Jets Tyson Rauch. Real great. We'll bring the fire. We'll bring his YouTube audience. So I need you guys to step up big on Jets weeks to combat them. They're great. Ephraim comes on. They have a bunch of regulars, and it's fantastic. We'll talk with the Jets guys as well, and then we occasionally round through the Dolphins people. But really good talk. We'll get into the Jets games as we get towards September and October, really great weeks for me. I love that show. But yeah, you look at these odds, and what really sticks out to me across the AFC too, and kind of to compare our divisions here, is that AFC West. Like, look, the Raiders at 8.2, and that's with having to play that division almost on par with the Patriots and the Dolphins. Like they're the fourth in their division, probably on par with the Bills' two best competitors. So like, that's a big difference, that in their division, they're having to play the Chargers 10 wins, the Broncos apparently 10.2, and the Chiefs 10.7.
Well, look at their conference in Super Bowl odds. The Raiders have almost the same percentage chance of winning the conference and winning the Super Bowl as Miami and New England, despite playing in a division that's absolutely loaded, and they're expected to finish in fourth place. I think we all agree, if you put the Raiders in the AFC East, we're picking them to finish second ahead of New England.
That's what I mean. Miami. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's really not a battle. Every division right now, there's in the AFC, outside of the AFC East, there's a sense of uncertainty. You look at the AFC South. Is Matt Ryan going to lead the Colts to division crown over Tennessee? In the AFC West, will Pat Mahomes be able to keep it going, or is somebody like Justin Herbert going to elevate the Chargers? Is Russell Wilson going to elevate the Broncos? Could Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones be the missing pieces for the Raiders? AFC North, you have the whole Deshaun Watson question. Is he going to be even able to play next year? And if he does, are the Browns the AFC North favorites? Are the Bengals still the favorites after going to the Super Bowl?
Right.
Could Baltimore, even Pittsburgh with Trubisky, there's some unknowns with the talent level they have on their defense. The AFC East is the one division you look at in the AFC, and you're just like, it's clearly the Bills right now. Maybe Miami, with some of their weapons, can surprise others and squeak their way in, and maybe give some tests to the Bills that are unforeseen. But it's not going to come from the Patriots, and it's definitely not coming from the Jets. So from a competitive balance, the Bills are lucky that they're in the division they are, because the rest of the conference is in for a dogfight going forward.
And you have losing records in the NFC that are going to make the playoffs right now per Vegas. I mean, you have obviously the division winners. They are looking good. But then you have the 49ers, who probably are the next best team in. And then you have maybe the Cardinals, the Vikings.
Might be Vikings versus Eagles for that 7th spot in the NFC. The talent has never been this one-sided conference to conference. There's been times when the NFC has been strong and the AFC has been weak and vice versa, but it has never been this lopsided where you just go through the quarterbacks in each conference. Really, in the NFC, you're only concerned about Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, and Dak Prescott. The whole AFC West has the same amount of talented quarterbacks. So it's really an amazing time. Obviously, I wish this talent was a little bit more so on the NFC to make it an easier road for the Bills. But it is what it is.
Last year we thought it was, though, before the trades with Russ over there, before, Mac played a little bit better, before, some of that stuff that was happening in the AFC. Like, we thought that it was fairly Mahomesy, before Herbert took his step. We thought it was fairly, and they didn't even make the playoffs, so I guess that didn't even matter. But it was fairly Bills, Chiefs, and nothing else.
And I do fairly. Like the one comment we just got. It said the Jets could be more competitive in Zach Wilson's second season. I do think the Jets showed some positive signs at the end of last year. I don't think they're anywhere close to competing for anything legitimate, but I am really interested to see what Zach Wilson does with a year under his belt. Their offseason has been decent to this point. Adding a couple talented tight ends, bringing in Tomlinson. So they have made some good moves. It's just so difficult to see teams like the Jets and Jacksonville and Houston taking steps up when the talent around them is just so astronomically better at this point. But the Jets have made some good moves, and if they were in the NFC, maybe you could expect them to take a little bit bigger leap than what we'll probably see this season.
Fair enough. Have to spend at least 5 minutes here of the show, at least, on the Jets. And going to turn the page over to the now. We've already been kind of segueing into the New York Jets. We've already broken down, go back in the show if you need to on the rewind, on the on-demand. Make sure you hit that like button here today. Go to the Facebook page, super easy, /Going Deep Pod on Facebook. Find it, like it, exclusive content there, maybe some giveaways there, Mike, as well as TikTok. We do have some chop ups and some quick videos over there too.
We're trying to do it all. This is not just going to be a podcast. We're trying to get
2022.
We're trying to embrace any audience, whether that's the Facebook crowd, the Twitter crowd, the TikTokers, the millennials. We're trying to interact with all the Bills Mafia. So really appreciate anyone that goes to our Facebook page, Going Deep Podcast on Facebook, gives it a like. Same with our Twitter, same handle. We're trying to interact with all Bills Mafia. And like Kev said, there's going to be some contests. So tell your friends, family, anyone. We're just here for a good time and to enjoy the Buffalo Bills.
Not always a long time, but definitely for a good time. And with all that being said, go back in the show to watch the Dolphin segment. Pretty long one. We kind of, obviously, with all the news there, check that out earlier in the show. Broke down the Patriots a little bit. Check that out in the show from just a little while ago. And then it's time for the Jets. And really, there's some comments in there now about how they had a sneaky good offseason. And there's a little bit of rumblings on that. Like, there's definitely some people who would share that sentiment with what they were able to do. Lincoln Tomlinson, CJ Zuma, Ty Conklin. So they were able to bring in some decent names there across the board. Jordan Whitehead, DJ Reed. So depending on, Jacob Martin, depending on what you thought of some of those moves, especially at the tight end position, they were able to do, a fair amount there. Draft status. It's time for the 5-year breakdown of the New York Jets. As you can imagine, 9 out of the league, 5 on other teams. So about the same as the Patriots. Have developed 8 starters recently. Good for them. As well as a couple backups in there too. So, and most recent, a lot of these teams actually most recent drafts, the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Jets, who have struggled for years. Why the Bills are ahead now. The most recent picks, obviously, Zach Wilson, whatever you want to consider him, showed some flashes. Elijah Vera Tucker, transition from tackle to guard, overall solid transition there. We got Michael Carter, a good productive runner out of North Carolina, team draft running backs, please. Like that pick a lot. Michael Carter there, they were able to get as a value there early in the 4th round, was a guy that I really liked. So, they had a couple of guys that were able to come out and produce. So an Elijah Moore, who many people like, seemed to always have injury issues at the receiver position, but he was another good pick. And they had some good overall picks this year. Brandon Echols, a cornerback that they got in the 6th round. So they did finally get it right in their draft. It just took them a long, long time. Quinnen Williams, obviously, and then the absolute bust that is Denzel Mims that we have Ty tell us about all the time from 2020, an absolute bust. Yes, we'll get you some draft stats here after I got them at an A rating, the Bills in their draft class, and I have basically the same numbers here, which is seriously why the Bills have taken a huge step up. I've got C- D+ ratings on these drafts that we just went through from the Jets, the Patriots, and the Dolphins. Some bad drafts. The Bills I have as an A-, AA-. So we'll go through those stats here. And it's really, really shocking. And because you asked, I do want to get you some draft stat updates, and then we'll pivot right back to the Jets and Mike's comments on the Jets. But I think the biggest note that you can have there is that their misses, are few and far between. The players out of the league aren't as many as you'd think. So we have only 2 out of the league in the last 5 years. We have actually, because of how good their roster is, 9 on other teams. So 9 draft picks play on other teams across the Bills land, 1 on the practice squad. And then you've developed 12 backups off of your draft classes. And how about this, guys? A whopping 38 starters in 5 years. 38 starters is the official number in their draft classes. Absolute dynasty player in Josh Allen. Whatever you think of Tremaine Edmonds, dynasty cornerback, still fits in Trey White in 2017 at the start of this whole thing. And their worst pick, obviously, Cody Ford. As we've talked about everybody, Cody Ford to me is their worst pick. Hasn't worked out in 3 different offensive line spots. Can't hit them all. Free agent bust, obviously, probably Star Latulele. Still got some production out of him. Got to be called what it is. Still was okay at times and productive at times. But outside of that, the Bills absolutely dominated and across the draft world. Absolute rock 17 and 18, like just absolute dynasty drafts. Dynasty is the draft you want in your fantasy football leagues. The Bills had it in real life in 2017 and 2018, absolutely rocking out, even growing Harrison Phillips, absolutely rocking out in both of those draft classes. Matt Milano, Taron Johnson, just absolute rock stars who signed second contracts for the most part outside of Harrison. Who they did replace, obviously, with their own free agent defensive tackles, and bringing back Jordan Phillips, etc. So just absolute dynamite as a comparison to they've been better than three of them combined, and the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Patriots combined at the draft category. And let's not even talk about free agency, where Bean's an absolute wizard with his safeties. Last year's free agency was probably the worst one he's had, but that's just because he didn't take too many shots anywhere. He brought it back as probably requested by the coaching staff and maybe requested by the offensive coaching staff in particular here. They brought back the offensive line, had a few struggles there. Didn't do much at the running game. I do expect that to change, Mike, here for the Buffalo Bills, but we got to round out the Jets. I'm not going to do them disrespect, Mike. Bouncing it over to you. What do you think of those couple of names we started this segment on? Nothing too like groundbreaking. Did add a guard and Tomlinson, couple tight ends. Still have the running back and Michael Carter. Zach Wilson, we'll see if he takes a step. Resign Joe Flacco after that weird trade. Braxton Berrios, the re-signing there as well, giving him some decent money. I still don't love their weapons, Mike. What do you think?
I think the Jets made some solid moves, but I still think they're very far away from really contending at a decent level. Obviously, that's the understatement of the year, but they're kind of in the position the Bills were early on with Josh Allen, where you have this young quarterback, you don't really have much weapons for him to give the ball to, and you're just hoping that he can show some flashes on tape, give you reasons for optimism to build around. And at this point, you're entering year 2 with Zach Wilson, if you're a Jets fan, not really knowing what you have. You have this ball of clay where he has this strong arm. He has these physical attributes that are very, very positive, but he didn't really show much last year at all. Strong arm, but lack of accuracy, didn't seem poised, got hurt, then was kept off the field for a period when the Jets decided to play musical chairs with their quarterbacks. It seemed like that was a positive thing to be off the field and kind of see from the bench in the press box for a little bit. But with Zach Wilson, you're really hoping he can take a step up. I like Elijah Moore. I think he has some ability. I think the Jets have a quality wide receiver in him. The tight end moves, I think, were smart to surround a young quarterback with. Uzoma just had a quality end to the year with the Bengals. Conklin is coming off a career year with the Vikings. So I think getting two tight ends of that caliber is going to help Wilson get a security blanket and find some dump off passes and guys to build some confidence in when things aren't going well. Overall, I don't think the Jets are going to light up the scoreboard much. I think they're still going to struggle. But for Saleh, for Wilson, for that entire team, it's just about making baby steps. We never thought the Bills in year 2 of Josh Allen were going to suddenly be a 10-6 unit. There were some reasons to be optimistic when they brought in Cole Beasley and John Brown, but most Bills fans would have said this is probably a 7-8 win team at that point in time. I think Jets fans are going into this year hoping maybe we can be that 6, 7, 8 win team. 8 might be on a high side of what they could get to with the way the AFC is looking at right now, but I think they're just ultimately hoping to have something to be positive about going into next year. And if Wilson can show those flashes, then they go all in on getting him weapons like Miami is doing for Tua. Because as weak as Tua is right now, Tua has at least shown he can be a game manager that you can have moderate success with if surrounded by decent players. Wilson, he's not at that point yet. So Jets fans are just begging for something.
And oh boy, do we have some takes on this podcast, Mike. We have some takes on the show, live on this show. We're either going to look real good, like here with my breakdowns, our stats, and our ideas, like really some good chop ups that we can use, or we could get added by some other team's fans here because we've made some proclamations and we've made some decisions and some opinions on what this might look like. So I'm feeling pretty good about my decisions and my proclamations and what I have to say about the division. I think you could have got people last year on the Patriots a little bit, but after getting blown out in the first round, was that really that successful? You determine it, failed down the stretch, struggled, really barely beat the Jaguars as their only win down the stretch. I don't know. I don't know how successful of a year that was. It was obviously got to go back to the playoffs and be there, but they absolutely got buried.
I'd say
so
successful season, disappointing finish. No one thought the Patriots were going to have the year they had last year.
I think this year, Matt, will tell you how good if they do carry that momentum and are able to string some stuff together, I do think that you can say that was a good building season. If they go backwards, though, Mike, was it that successful?
Is it possible to simultaneously at the same time have a great coaching job and a horrible coaching job? Because you think about it, with the way the Patriots were last year, if the roster was really as weak as they looked at the end of the year, then Belichick did an amazing job just guiding them to the playoffs. But if they were as good as they were during that run to finish the end of the year the way they did, would simultaneously be an awful coaching job. So I think this year will show us what last year truly was for the Patriots. Was it a mirage where they got a lucky run, or was it a self-destruction down the stretch where they just were exposed and they couldn't figure it out?
Yeah, and I mean enough about the AFC East. I have the Jets at 6 wins. I have the Patriots at 8, and I have the Dolphins at 9. That's where I'm at. That's what I'm feeling. Things can change. I want to see these drafts. The Dolphins don't have one, so I don't have to really worry about that. I want to see what these teams are able to do, the Jets do. So I want to put these pieces together all season. And we'll bring this segment back. So, this is a early AFC East battle, AFC breakdown. We're going to bring you probably that breakdown part 2, probably at some point in May, OTAs, probably in a couple of months, see how things kind of pan out. And then kind of maybe a final review in the preseason, like right in the definitely part 3 will come early September around Labor Day. We'll probably bring some type of part 3 there with everything all factored in, injuries, whatever at that time. So big news, Mike, out of the Bills world. The stadium's looking good. They did just get approved of the $200 million of the ownership loan in the budget for April 1st. The last possible day, is that right?
I believe they need it in by the end of March. Before April connects. And now Mark Poloncarz is going to have his state of the county address at the Bills practice facility on March 31st. So basically, like we've all speculated, just waiting till the last possible moment to announce this for purely political reasons, most likely. But it appears that it's just a matter of time before it gets announced that the Bills will be getting a new stadium. If you've been reading up on Tim Graham, John Warrow, any of the reporting from Chris Horvatitz at WIVB, this has seemed like in that inevitability for quite some time.
Breaking ground should happen soon and at some point, and then getting ready for the 2026. Is that right?
I think that's the goal. That's what you keep saying. What they keep saying. Apparently, the Bills have already started their planning. They're getting everything going. They're that confident that this is all settled. So that basically tells you everything you need to know. It's just a matter of time.
They will knock out where I like to tailgate, unfortunately, and where I like to be. Right where the new stadium is where I'm going to go. We'll see what happens with the ECC, a couple of those other things, how this all works. They're probably going to re-sign the lease then. That's what the Pagulas wanted. So that lease will get re-signed as well to play games there. It's great. Honestly, a good side note because
we could do an entire show just on this.
Yeah.
One of these days in the future. I don't know how popular it would be with some fans, but I have a bunch of thoughts and on how this should go and how it will go.
Okay.
And it's something I've been following really close. It's been something I've honestly thought about hypothetically for the last decade. So
should have been in Amherst, right, Mike? Should have been shared with UB, right? In Amherst.
No way. Don't tell the UB people that.
For sure.
No, it is what it is. I was a downtown guy, but I'm all on board with it.
Well, I'm Team Dome. So we have some good opinions. Both ways. Why not give your franchise quarterback the optimal playing conditions?
You got to stop living in that reality. It ain't going to happen, so you got to move on.
We got it covered. I'll take a little bit. That could help. That's definitely going to help a little bit. Yeah, their current lease will be extended. They need what kind of to wrap that up is that they're going to be playing there at this at Highmark Stadium. I don't know if Highmark's going to get the new name once it opens. I'm going to guarantee those bidding rights are going to be a lot more. But Highmark Stadium will probably exist until the new stadium opens, and Highmark gets to be played in underneath that too. So better than going to Penn State or whatever else that was in the talks.
That was never going to happen. That was
horrible.
Sometimes things get leaked just so people stay in their place. And a lot of those leaks in the beginning in August when the rumors were first coming out about the new stadium talks were out there strictly just so fans know and county politicians and state politicians know. Don't take it for granted that we will just keep the team here forever. We do want some concessions and some things in these negotiations. And the state got the message, the county got the message, and here we are about to announce a new stadium. So it all worked out for the most part. After the first couple weeks of talking, things got pretty clean and it was pretty fair back and forth. No dirty negotiations. So
yeah, it really wasn't that dirty. Like
there was the whole Austin talk. The one moment got out there. Some people were upset about that, but for the most part, as much as the Pagulas are disliked by Sabres fans in Buffalo and large portions of Buffalo population, I do think the way every side handled this was professionally done and done with well intentions. I know people are going to disagree about public money being used for a stadium, and I understand that. There's study after study that says that.
Harvard.
You're a small market like Buffalo. You're the 31st size market in the NFL. You lose this team, it would devastate this area. It would devastate the fan base. And the truth is, as much as it hurts to say it, we're lucky to have an NFL team. And the Pagulas, as NFL owners, they don't owe fan bases anything because billionaires think about themselves first and foremost.
Kroenke. Yeah,
we're able to keep a team. It's a win-win for the Pagulas. It's a win-win for the Buffalo community and for Bills fans all over the place. So
how passionate Bills fans are, the Pagulas coming in and Josh Allen a little bit. Like I think the combination was just like such
it was the perfect storm. It was a perfect storm. They said a couple years.
It happened to the Colts too. Yeah. When the Colts won with Peyton Manning, the Super Bowl, all that too. It just worked out timing wise. You tend to do that when your franchise is getting better. You tend to drive and go to that success. It will be a grass field, partly covered. So great
80%
news.
Covered, man. It's going to be 80% covered. And if you look up some of the mock-ups of some of those newer European soccer stadiums, the way they have it covered, it'll be comfortable for Bills fans. The concessions are going to be nicer. The seats are going to be more comfortable. I love Highmark Stadium. I love going to games at the Ralph. I've been a season ticket holder for 5 years. It's something I look forward to every single Sunday during Bills season to be part of that atmosphere. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say I'm looking forward to having a more comfortable game day experience. And you go to games in late December, even when the team is good and there's thousands of empty seats. We don't like to admit it because we're such a passionate fan base, but there is games that of importance in recent years where there was empty seats. So I am looking forward to when this all gets done, we get the new stadium and we pack it for every game. Because if you have 80% cover, there's never going to be an excuse not to go to a game while this team is a contender ever again.
And for what it's going to be, the prices should still be fair and reasonable and somewhat decent and able to afford that. So like Mike said, if you guys would like to see a stadium show, that's a good point. And I would imagine the ticket prices will be pretty
they'll be high, but they won't be high compared to the rest of the league. That's what I'll say.
Hey, Jason, maybe you could be in the running for a ticket giveaway at some point. So tune into that. Have been known to do that. So stay tuned for a ticket giveaway. Gonna pick some winners. Maybe draft time. Gonna pick some more giveaways. We got some cool signed autographed cards here that we're gonna select some winners for. So we got a lot going on in the giveaway front. If you'd like to see a stadium show and or hear a stadium show, let us know. Tweet us at our show, please. The Going Deep Pod on Twitter, Facebook. Let us know. We will, if we get enough feedback, we'll do a stadium show. If not, and you're like, I'm over this, it's done, it's over. Like, that's cool too.
We'll do a short. We'll do a short.
Yeah.
We'll do something. We'll do a short. We'll do a show. Whatever you guys want. That's why we got these platforms. So
absolutely,
always content to be made.
Yeah, and we appreciate everybody tuning in here on the Friday night. Like we talked about on our inaugural show, like if you like to talk Bills every single day of the week, it doesn't stop just because it's a Friday night. You might be bored. What better thing to do than turn on some great Bills content on the Going Deep podcast? Give us a like, give us reviews. Check out the audio edition too, which will be up and available on all of your major podcast platforms. We're going to try to bring you those heavy hitting topics, those opinion based. We're going to back it up with some statistics. We have some great analytics on this site, as you all already know, between Cover One Buffalo and the Air Raid show and so many other great, and Anthony too, like so many, just say distinguished coverage. There's so many like great shows here on our podcast network. So make sure you do tune into every single one of them. So we appreciate that. We appreciate being the Friday show and bringing you those content shorts, and as well as giving back to the community. The number one thing that I want to do is also give away some things, give away some tickets. And for next show, I have to have it dialed up, but I am going to put in I'm going to do this. I'm going to put in the Ty Montgomery clip that will be here and available, and I'm going to play it throughout the show. So if needed, and possibly a horn, and maybe at some point we'll have a video intro too, and or audio intro or something cool to kick us off each show. As our goal, what do you guys think of our graphics, by the way? These are brand new, got a brand new logo, brand new layout. We're going to be growing on the graphics package. So let us know what you guys think of that as well. Thanks. And we thank everybody for tuning in, the kind words, the second edition of the Going Deep podcast here on the Cover One Network. I'm Kevin Messeri. That's Mike Bunt. And we really appreciate everybody for tuning into this AFC East Roundup. We'll catch you guys next Friday at 8.